can't figure out what I'm doing, just raise your hand, because if you don't understand it, then that means I'm probably explaining it wrong, and probably other people in the room are also not understanding it. So just stop me and say, hey, that makes no sense. Okay, so OAuth. As I said earlier, OAuth allows two applications to share data of a user in a way that kind of allows, with his consent, right? In a way that allows magic to happen. And by magic, I mean anything that one application by itself could not do. So let me give you a very simple example. I have one application that knows my musical tastes, right? And knows what bands I like and what artists I like. And there's this other application that knows what concerts are playing in Pardubice today, right? So by themselves, none of them could do it, but together they could tell me, hey dude, Justin Bieber's playing right across the street, like go and see him, right? So, I mean, that's totally a theoretical example, absolutely. And this is what we aim to do. And why this is, I mean, technically it seems a bit complicated, but practically it's very simple because it's the most natural way to do this. And I'm going to prove this to you. I'm going to prove this to you. Now, the following questions, anybody who actually knows how OAuth works, please don't answer. I would like answers from the people who have never used OAuth, have no idea how it works, right? So, you have a friend. His name is Matt. Your friend Matt comes to you and gives you all these files. And he has like bank files and his diary, I don't know, and you know, his utility bills and all kinds of random files. And he gives them all to you. And he asks you to, of course, keep them safe, and he trusts you to keep his files safe, right? Then you get a call. And this guy comes on and says, you've never met this guy, you have no idea who he is. He says, hi, I'm Matt's accountant. And I have Matt here, and he said that I should, like, that he should give me all of his bank files, because I need to, you know, do his accounting. What would you do? Hey, what would you do? Come on.
I will call Matt.
Right, call Matt.
I would ask him if he's really his accountant or not.
Exactly. So obviously the most natural response is, dude, I'm not going to trust you just because you say Matt is okay with this. I'm going to ask Matt, right? It's his files. So especially since in this example the guy claims Matt is right there with him, I would say, hey, can I talk to Matt? So you talk to Matt, and Matt comes on, and what do you ask him?
Well, I hope I would recognize him by...
Yes, let's say you recognize his voice. He's a great friend of yours. You really know him. So you know it's Matt. What do you ask Matt?
I would ask him if it's okay if I gave files to the accountant.
Right. So you go and you ask Matt, hey Matt, this guy who says is your accountant, is it okay if I give your bank files to him, right? And Matt will say yes or no. Hopefully he'll say yes, because otherwise this doesn't really make sense in real life, right? But you know, Matt will say yes. So then you give the files to the accountant. Next day, the accountant calls you again and says, hey, I need those files again. What would you do?
Well, that's weird.
Well, I mean, it's kind of debatable, but if Matt already said this guy is his accountant and he's doing his accounting, then probably it makes sense to kind of give him the files again. But if the next day the accountant guy comes and says, oh, hey, it's me, the accountant again, can I have Matt's diary? You're probably going to say, hell no, hell no. Matt said he's okay with you getting his bank files, but his diary? No, probably not. Let me ask Matt again, right? So this is surprisingly close to how OAuth works. This is very, very similar to the security protocol here. And that's why it's pretty easy to understand, because it's exactly what you would do as people in this situation. So it's really straightforward. And I'm going to show you kind of like how to do it now. And to do this, I've actually, let's see if my wireless still works. It does. Okay, So I have a little application here that I'm kind of trying to force App Engine to load right now. So App Engine will only really load your application when it's in use, unless you are willing to pay for resources just sitting idle. And this is just a free app, so it's not configured that way. So let's see. I'm going to go to my application, and okay, this is a bit of Ajax doing some background requests. There you go. So what this application is, the name Nomadic Drummer, that is kind of a lucky circumstance. When you create a Google Cloud project, it generates an ID for you, and it's an adjective and a noun, and it's automatically, like, it picks random words. And for me, it picked Nomadic Drummer, and this is a music app, so I thought it's perfectly appropriate. It's thank you for the name, Google, right? So it's an application which basically has a list of concerts that are happening, and you can kind of go and buy tickets. If I go and click something like, whoa, Justin Bieber, oh my god. Click this, and it pops up in my tickets list, right? And each concert has a location, an artist, it has a start time, which I haven't bothered formatting, but you of course are developers, so you find this the perfect way to format date and time, right? I mean, this makes perfect sense. And it also has an end time, there's also a duration that's not displayed here. So we have this application, we like it, it's awesome, and we think about, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if we integrated this with Google Calendar, right? So the user comes in here, buys a ticket to Justin Bieber, but maybe he'll forget by the time the concert actually happens. So we'd like to kind of up here add a button that says add to my calendar. And I would like it that when I press this, it just magically appears in my Google Calendar. Now there's several ways to do this, and there's some of them are easier. You can kind of provide an event file that the user might open with his calendar application, which might be Google Calendar, but there's a lot of mights there, and it also doesn't allow us to kind of update this. You know, maybe Justin Bieber decides to delay the concert by an hour or two. You know, we would like to be able to continue to have access to the user's calendar, kind of keep his calendar up to date. So we're going to do this live, but to kind of make this presentation fit within 1 hour, we can't do everything here, so I kind of made a couple of changes ahead of time, because they're not really related to OAuth, so you know, they weren't that important. So what I did, oh, by the way, this is kind of a typical Java App Engine application. It has a JSON API for providing most of the data. It uses a bunch of components you might have heard of. JSON for serializing to and from JSON, Objectify for accessing data and data store. If all these things don't make sense to you, it doesn't matter, because they're not related to our actual demo today. So what we've done, oh, and the front end, the application, is AngularJS application. Anybody here use AngularJS? Wow, great, great. So you guys know what this is. For the others, it's a framework for doing JavaScript in a smart, data-bound, funny way. We don't have time to go into it, but you should totally research it. It's really nice to use. So what we've done is we've added in our table, we've added, oh, you can't really read this if I select it. We've added a little form that posts to our API somewhere to calendar/add to calendar, and it has an input, like a hidden input field with the ID of the concert we're trying to add to calendar. And there's a button, right? And what the other thing we've done, just kind of to prepare, we're using something called Jersey for mapping, like for directing requests from the user to our code. It's not very important that you understand how that works. The point is, this will come in here. Any kind of requests to /calendar in our applications will hit this class, right? And we've added a little, let's see if this helps. Should be able to make this. Oh, I think if I click here, there you go. There you go. So we've added a little add to calendar method that right now claims it added your calendar added the concept to your calendar. It doesn't do anything because that's where we're going to put some code in. And I've prepared ahead of time this little method, add concept to calendar, that uses Google Calendar's API to actually add the event. So Google Calendar, like many other Google products, offers a very fully featured API. You can do pretty much anything you can do in the UI, you can do programmatically through an API. Eventually, adding an event kind of boils down to posting a little blurb of JSON to that URL, googleapis.com/calendar/v3/calendars. Then the calendar ID, which happens to be your email address, so we can just kind of grab that, then /events. And you kind of post a little blurb with summary, description, location, things like that, and it'll just pop up on the calendar. The problem is, we could just call this method now, but the problem is if we do this, what do you think will happen? What will Google Calendar do if I just kind of do this now, as is? Well, it will tell you no, because my random application that I've just written on App Engine shouldn't be able to just go to any of your calendars and add events to them, right? So that's not how it works. So it'll just say, no, access denied, right? And to make it accept this, you have to set this. Oh, again, the selection kind of breaks it, so let's not do that. You have to do this, right? You have to put an authorization header in the request that contains a magic string that will make Google accept your request. And so what we're going to do for the rest of the presentation essentially is get this magic authorization string that works. So let's get started. Do note this is live. There's no tricks here. It will probably be wrong for a couple of tries. We'll compile it and see what breaks. I also need you guys to be my background Java compiler. So if you do see something that is wrong, like it makes no sense in Java, just speak up because it is probably a mistake. I'm doing this right now. So let's see. Okay, so getting back to our introduction to OAuth. What was the first thing we said we'd do? Well, you need to ask the user, hey, are you okay with this guy accessing your calendar? And let me show you how this looks on the web. I'm just going to show you in this little tool called OAuth 2 Playground. Right? This little tool, it's very good if you're actually developing OAuth 2 applications or anything. It allows you to try everything out ahead of time. And how it works is, let's say that I'm going to explain what this list is in a second, don't worry. So let's say I want to access calendar. I click this, and the user will see something like this. See? Okay, let me make this a little bit bigger. There you go. That's the name of the application, Google OAuth 2 Playground. Is requesting permission to manage your calendars. Ignore the second line there. I'll explain that as well. Don't worry. But for now, ignore it. And so the user gets two buttons. This one is actually blue. It comes out very gray there, but it's actually blue. It says allow access or no thanks. The user is actually quite polite. No thanks. That being said, so we want to trigger something like this, right? And the way you, sorry, not here, there you go. The way you trigger something like this is you have to redirect the user to Google. Because if you think back to the example that we talked about earlier, who should ask the user for permission? The accountant? No, because that wouldn't make any sense, right? Like if the accountant says, oh yeah, I asked Matt and he says it's okay. Makes perfect sense, right? Oh, sure, then it's fine. Why would you lie, right? So that doesn't work. So just like in that example, it's Google, the one that has data about the user's calendar, right? It's Google that needs to ask the user for consent. So how you do this is we're gonna redirect the user to a URL somewhere in Google. And first, let's build this thing. Let's build this URL. It's also, if you're not familiar with Java, I think most of what I'll do is pretty self-explanatory, even if you don't program in Java. But if there's any questions, just feel free to ask if there's something that doesn't make sense. So we're going to build this URL string. And Let's see what goes in it, because actually this URL string is how we will communicate to Google what we want, and we're going to see how that works. So first, there's one particular address that we need to go to trigger that confirmation. It's well documented in the APIs. I'm just going to type it because I kind of know it by heart, but you don't have to remember this by heart. You can totally see this in the documentation, right? It goes something like this: accounts Google.com. You know that anything that is really secure and really important towards the security of your account happens on accountsgoogle.com, right? So what do we need to tell the guy, right, when we call him? Let's see. Well, first we have to tell him what we want. And what we want is we want to do this OAuth thing. And unfortunately, it's a little bit more complicated here because there's not a single way to do OAuth. What we're going to do is called the server flow for OAuth. And this means that we have a web server, kind of a traditional web server that you send a request to, it gives you back a page. And we want this to get access to your calendar, like the server. We want the server to be able to access your calendar. This is called the server flow, but there's other flows as well. There's flows for a smart JavaScript app to do this. There's also flows for things like a fridge to do this. I'm not kidding. There's a way to do OAuth on a device that has no keyboard or display. Well, I think you need a small display. I'm not entirely sure. But there's all kinds of flows for OAuth to support all kinds of devices. Mobile phones, maybe a native Windows application, right? That's not a browser. That can't use cookies and things like that, right? There's different flows for all of them.